Again here for another edition of the program called What's Going On, and we are here at allpointstv.com. Come together with you, hopefully, each Monday at 2 o'clock, and we'll stay around much to your like or dislike, depending on your on your preference, from 2 to 3, and I hope you stay tuned for the next hour. I think we'll say a few things that you may find of some interest. And I'd like to hear some of your comments about some of the topics that we will be covering. I'll be covering two things basically. I want to continue to talk and try to clear up any of the loose ends on the impeachment process, which I think we ought to be seeing that pretty soon, as far as someone other than Donald Trump. And we need to understand the process a little bit better than we do. And I wish these scholars could understand it first so they can teach it to others. They don't understand it themselves. And I'm going to say a few things here that all of them are missing, and none of them are going to be able to come into this wheelhouse and say anything around this that I'm not going to be talking about. And I do not stand corrected by any of them because they don't have my expertise and don't have my training. And I'm just telling you that up front, so before any of you scholars feel froggy, before you jump out here, of course you're not going to do that. And you have not done it. I've been calling your name out over the last so many months and some years, in fact, and haven't gotten a response yet. But they know I'm out here, and they don't say anything, and they are very well served not to say anything. This pollution got to stop. This word pollution in this country is unbelievable. I just continue to be stunned by what these politicians, for example, tell us. And they tell us some of the most ridiculous things. And people are falling for it. And, listen to what these it's a waste of time. It's a waste of my time, at least, to be listening to these people. I don't even know. I can't even put my finger on why we listen to politicians, rather than doing what their presence demands, and that is we do what is constitutionally mandated and why the Constitution was in fact written. And that is because we have to restrain them. I don't know what we're doing listening to them. You need to restrain politicians. And that was the intended right in the Constitution of the United States, to find a better way to restrain them than what was used in the Articles of Confederation. That's why they said in the preamble to the Constitution. Listen to these words here. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessing of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, our children. And with that in mind, they finished it out by saying, do ordain and establish this Constitution with that in mind of the United States of America. So that's what they did. They didn't say anything about we need to be listening to these people. And so I'm going to continue to talk. I'm going to hopefully be able to put to bed all questions on the impeachment process and make a few statements that I've not made yet, but I want to be as complete as possible in finishing this topic up, because we need to understand it, because we need to be entering into it as I speak. But we need to understand the process, because so far there's no indication that anybody that's taking us down the road of the impeachment process. It is a process. And nobody taking us down this road has understood this process based upon what they've done in the past given its use. And I'm talking about ever since they have invoked it in the history of the country. Nobody that has used the process has understood the process. Let me put it that way. And you are scholars that are tuning in the program, but hiding out that you're present in the tuning it in. I know you're there because I can tell by some of the things you're saying on other networks, but you don't identify yourself publicly. And I know why that's true also. Let me and I don't want to spend the whole hour on this, but I do want to finish up a few technical points that need to be made, and I want to move on to something else. I want to get to what Edmund Burke said, which I think validates the greatness of the framers of the country, which we need to understand them a lot more now and appreciate the parameters they put around power a lot more than we do, because we need them now more than ever. And I would invite you to read the 3-part series I'm doing right now on Facebook, and commend Facebook, by the way, for not embarrassing themselves by coming on my posts. They're not doing what they once were doing, getting on my post, telling me to go to some other source and see what they were saying at the CDC. This is one of the constants. Go to the CDC and the WHO for more resources. And they could do that while they had the coronavirus myths coming out here, through which you could not challenge anything they were saying. And now that they've been discredited, they don't do that anymore. So I'm glad to see they backed off of that front. But they're going to back off a whole lot of other fronts before it's over, because I'm not through with the CDC and the WHO yet. I'm taking on all comers. And I'm telling all of you out here, I don't care what your training is in the law and in the Constitution of the United States. I don't care what your training is. I'm telling all of you scholars to pay attention. What I've noticed here is that every time that they've had an impeachment, and sometimes they've had impeachment of officers that are not even allowed to be impeached through the impeachment process as explained in the Constitution of the United States. But what I've noticed every time someone has been impeached in the history of the country, it's always been carried to the Senate for trial. Every time. And let me tell you why that is not appropriate. You can do that. Nothing prohibits you from doing it, but nothing requires you to do it either. It is not required. I'm gonna tell you why. Don't worry. I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you I'm gonna tell you what is not authorized, and tell you why it's not authorized, which nobody has ever gone into before. They've assumed it. But look at the word assume and understand all the implications of that term. You don't have to take impeachment once it is made by the only body that can bring it about, and that is the House of Representatives. But you don't have to take it to trial. Let me tell you why. It's always been taken to trial, but that's because the persons that were 10 years beyond the writing of the Constitution had lost sight of what they had done in that room. Particularly when you take a senator, as they did in 1797, 10 years after the Constitution had been drafted, and 9 years after it had been ratified, which was ratified the following year in 1788, they were taking a senator to, after impeaching him, that was inappropriate, and then taking him to trial, that was really inappropriate. The Tennessee, the senator from Tennessee at this point, which Tennessee wasn't even a state at the time of the ratification of the Constitution. The ratification of the Constitution would have occurred by 13 states. By the time of George Washington being inaugurated in 1789, there was 16. I'm sorry. There were 13 states. 13. But by the time you have the impeachment of the senator of Tennessee, there were 16 states, and Tennessee was not a state at the time of ratification. So I can understand why something had gotten lost in the process, and now they think they can impeach a senator. And that's because they didn't understand the Constitution. But they're not the ones in that room, so I can exonerate them of any intentional wrongdoing. But don't forget the road to hell is not always paved with bad intention. There's some bad intentions on that road as well, but not all of the times that you go down that road are the intentions are, bad. There are sometimes the intentions are good. But you can pave that road with good intentions too. And the trying of senators in these, first of all, to impeach a senator and a member of the House of Representatives is inappropriate and is not allowed by the Constitution of the United States. And you scholars had better not say anything about that. And you don't say anything on TV about it because you don't know this. You train lawyers. You're not trained. It took me I have to say this about myself. It took me a long time to understand why some of these lawyers, like Alan Dershowitz, Lawrence Tribe, and Jonathan Turley, are saying the things they're saying on television. I couldn't wrap my head around why they were saying what they were saying. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't understand why they were saying it. But then I began to read about someone that had written one of the, I think, 15 books now on the incorrect guide, and there's different topics to go into. And it wasn't until I read the one called The Incorrect Guide to the Constitution that I understood and was able to differentiate the difference in the training between those that are trained lawyers and those that are trained constitutional scholars, which the lawyers are not trained constitutional scholars. Their training is different. And I can appreciate the difference in the training, but I need to point out what the difference in the training is. The difference in the training is that they're trained in the law, and the law is not about the Constitution. The law is about the Supreme Court, what the Supreme Court has said about the Constitution.
Actually, what lawyers engage in is what used to be referred to in the Greeks and Romans as rhetoric. That's what it is. I mean, they engage in, they ask they basically try to win an argument, and then they'll win an argument. I mean, what was it? Plato or Socrates both railed against the sophist. That's what it is. They engage in sophistry.
Yeah, John, you make it so explicit. You're just about as explicit as I am in turn. I just don't beat around the bush, but you made it very explicit. These are rhetoricians. They're not the people of the Supreme Court. I'm going back to John Marshall, the fourth Chief Justice of the Supreme Court from 1801 to 1835, the longest tenured Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in the nation's history. And John Marshall was a rhetorician. You can use language to hide a lot of things, some of it which is to hide your intention, and some of it is to hide your ignorance. And Marshall was very good at doing both by extending some things into the interpretation of the document that was not there and wasn't intended. I think the country got off track very early in the country's development, and that would be starting with John Marshall. His tenure was a problem for the country, and that's why we need to understand even the impediment of intent of tenure. We need to stop these career politicians from sitting in halls of power in this country. I'm just telling you, I need to get rid of that. Then, if they were as translucent, transparent as George Washington was, they would take an example and go to Washington and do the best they can do, and do it for a period of time, exhaust themselves in the process of good government, and understand once that exhaustion has occurred to leave and go back home. There's only so much good a person can do, even with the best intentions. And once you've done that, let someone else come in and pick it up from there and do the best they can do. And with regularity, this is our role, and regularity, send them home if they don't go home voluntarily.
Well, look,
We've not learned that.
Well, during the healthcare debate, John Conyers was asking about the healthcare bill, and he goes, "It's like 2,000 pages." Somebody asked him if he read it. No, I didn't read it. Well, I was understanding. I thought these bozos were supposed to be the ones writing it.
Right.
So it means basically they don't even do that. They're not even working that hard.
Right.
Some special interest group walks up and says,
That's true.
"Pass this." And they say, "Oh,
that's
okay.
exactly what happened."
That's all it is."
Yeah.
And I mean, he admitted to that, and nobody was outraged by this. And I mean, I was like, and then
outraged.
And Pelosi said, "You got to pass it before you see what's
Yeah.
in it." Do you buy a car or a house looking at the material? Do you sign the mortgage without reading the damn mortgage?
Right.
No.
John, you're making another excellent point. This is offensive. What they're telling us is offensive. Should be offensive to us. You have to pass the bill in order to before you read it, and they get away with that. The woman has all this tenure in the Congress. Nobody's turned her out yet after making a statement like that, which is an assault upon our intelligence. Conyers made that comment and was insulted by anyone even suggesting that he read it. That they would suggest that he read the bill before they vote upon the bill. That's how this is the way they think. Or don't think. But this is an assault upon the integrity of the framers of this country, and also an assault upon the intelligence of the American people. But we can't stop voting for them because we return 96% of them. When we have a chance to get at them, we return 96% of them back to their positions in the halls of power, and that's problematical in this country to keep doing that over and over again. That's insane, based upon every definition of insanity. But we have to understand the processes that we are using in order to bring about accountability. You just can't just do helter-skelter, get out there and start using a process that has yet to be understood, and nobody's understood it yet. Nobody that has used the impeachment process, I will tell you this, without any threat of anybody challenging this, no one that has used this process of impeachment has understood it, that's made use of it. And how do I know that? Because every time there's been use made of it, they have taken it to the Senate for trial. Now, Lawrence Tribe, I'm calling your name out. Lawrence Tribe, I think he's emeritus now of Harvard University. I'm Wayne. See, I'm Wayne State. I am Eastern Michigan University. I am Michigan State. I am U of M. Those are the schools, the universities I've gone to in the postgraduate. These are the top universities. Well, you wouldn't say Eastern necessarily in that this discussion. I think you should start mentioning that a little bit more than you do, and not turning your nose nose up so much when you don't hear these Ivy League schools being mentioned. I do have some respect for the Ivy League schools, but I do not take any notes from them, and I don't have to take any notes from them. I'm better trained than those coming out of those universities. And I'm just telling you that is true. And I'm telling these scholars to their faces that their training is beneath the training that I have. And they watch this program. They are aware I'm out here. And they watch this program. I catch them every once in a while because I can read some of the things that they say as a subtle correction of what they said in the past. They don't say it anymore, and they just stop saying it. I can tell by that, for example. Lawrence Travis not going to say anymore that a person has not been impeached until it's been taken to the Senate. He's not going to say that anymore. And I've stopped him from saying it. Because the statement is outrageous. Now, let me try to finish this up today. There's so much to be said about it, but let me try to finish this up today if I can. I have another topic I want to go to. I want to read something very important by Edmund Burke. But what I want to clear up, first of all, is the fact that every time a person has been impeached, the matter has been referred to the Senate for trial, and as if that's obligatory and mandatory and mandated by the Constitution of the United States. It's been done every time that a office holder that falls under the impeachment, and some that have not fallen under the impeachment, the parameters of impeachment, every time that has occurred, sometimes inappropriately occurring, it has been referred to the Senate for trial. Now, I have the Constitution in front of me. And I'm going to read to you. I don't have to read it, but I'm going to read it where you know that I'm not just out here saying this, but I'm going to read you and tell you where it's located, where you can read it for yourself. Where it says in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5, I've quoted it many times before, but I want to tell you what it says and tell you what it doesn't say. Which they act like it says what it doesn't say. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5 says in part, and I just say the part that's relevant to our discussion right now, it says the House of Representatives shall have the sole power of impeachment. Now, the problem that people have is that they don't understand the power just of that. You see, don't forget that when we're talking about the impeachment process, we're talking about the political process. But can you imagine just the weight of the people's representative in the most numerous body of the Congress officially accusing a president, a vice president, and civil officers of the United States of America the people's representatives making an official accusation against the president, the vice president, and all civil officers of the United States. That in of itself should carry a tremendous amount of weight, and you don't need any further action taken unless, listen carefully, unless you intend to act on it to the point of removal. You damn idiots.
I never heard you swear. No.
I take this very seriously, John.
I know you do. I mean, you're intense, but I've worked with you how many years, and I never heard you say that.
I have to say it in this case here, because I got to tell you scholars something, to stand down. Because you're hurting this country with your nonsense.
That's what they want, though. They hate this country. Even
They
though
do,
the benefit from
and
everything of it.
it must be stopped. We're losing this country because the scholars go read Ayn Rand's book. About the new intellectuals. Go read that book by Ayn Rand, and read where she chastises the scholars for having been derelict in their responsibility. If they stood up to responsibility, the intellectuals, or at least the scholars, we don't have any intellectuals. We don't have any public intellectuals. We have scholars. If they lived up to the responsibilities, the people that are running this country could not have gotten away with it, because the scholars would be playing the role of pointing out where they are in error and bring them back into to alignment with that which is allowed in the document that governs their behavior, the Constitution of the United States of America. The scholars do a disservice, by the way, always quoting the Supreme Court and looking for the final word in what's been said by nine members of the Supreme Court, who among themselves can agree upon what is written in black and white. 5 on this side, 4 on that side, and they agree based upon the whichever group has a majority in which particular ideological group is at that point ruling upon the matters come before the Supreme Court. If it's 6-3, pretty much as it stands right now, certainly 5-4, but 6-3 in some cases because of the appointments. Pretty good appointments. Stylistically, good appointments because of the fact that they hold their feet more so to the fire than was done previously when they had these the balance on the Supreme Court going toward the more liberal side of things. You have to understand something here. The Constitution is a conservative document, and unless I fail to say this, so was the American Revolution.
Who else said that? They said that basically the Englishmen would have rights, and when they came over to the colonies to create the colonies, they were supposed to have that extended to them as being English subjects, and that they were basically being thrown away. Their rights were thrown away, and their assertion of that was actually basically saying we have these rights already established. We want to preserve that into the colonies. And so I forget which statement it was. It was a British statesman who said that, but he saw that as a conservative revolution, because they're saying, no, we are, and you're abusing your power and authority over the colonists, and they are British subjects, and they're supposed to have these rights guaranteed to them. But I forget who said that.
Yeah, they were. It sounds a lot like James Wilson, but a lot of them were saying that they were very reluctant. in this country to sever the ties of with Great Britain, because they had a lot of respect for the traditions going back to 1215 with the Magna Carta, and also with the Petition of Rights in 1628. You know, the tradition that they had in England, which had at that point the most restrained government on the planet, even though they had, it wasn't perfect, but it still was the better of the better governance that was going on during that point in time.
Yeah, let's face it, a lot of the French, I mean, Voltaire held the British form of government up way over. He held on a higher esteem than he did the
Yes,
French.
he did.
Because the French Revolution, too, degenerated rapidly into chaos and bloodshed and unnecessary bloodshed.
Yeah, and John, you're making some excellent points. The point is that the American Revolution stands out. It has no peers because of the restraints that were imposed by the conservative extent to which the revolution was being played out. They were not doing any retribution once it was over. There was no reign of terror that got out of control where it became a bloodbath. The blood was shed in defense of what was written in the Declaration of Independence. Once that was in fact decided upon in 1783, the bloodletting was over. But in terms of the British trying to stop what was going to happen as they pledged their lives and their sacred honor to the cause to which they assigned, to which they had been signatories, that was going to be carried out according to what they said in the document until death, which is the commitment it took in order to bring about the results that would have occurred. But it took 7 years to bring about those results.
A point I'd like to bring back too, you were mentioning about how there was a reluctance to leave Great Britain. You know, the government or the governance of Great Britain. Ben Franklin's own son basically said he actually left the what we call the United States now and went to England.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean there was a split right there within the founders because some of them had such ties to it and didn't want to see that disrupted. They parted ways.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, let me read this to you. I want to get back to what I'm talking about, but let me read this to you right here. If you don't think they were reluctant to sever those ties, let me go back and read some words here in the severance. Let's see if I can find it in this document here. I want to read you Jefferson's words in the Declaration of Independence. Listen to Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson. Listen to this right here. When in the course of human events, Charles Adams has a book out called In the Course of Human Events. It's taken from this passage. This is in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. That it should not go on for light and transient reasons. Why? Because of the respect for the traditions and the relationship that is now being severed. That should not be taken lightly. But what Thomas Jefferson is saying is that, but when there's a long train of abuses that have gone on without redress, then the severance is not only necessary, it is mandated. Now, when I get to Edmund Burke, I'll tie this in because Edmund Burke has something to say about on the matter also. But let me try to get back. Let me try to. I'm trying to tie together a lot of loose ends here, so I want to stay as focused as I can. But it does require some deviation and some tangential movement. I want to tell you scholars that you need to understand what you're doing a little bit better than you do, because you have a tremendous responsibility and it's not being fulfilled by what you're doing and what you're saying. And it's too much of this monkey see, monkey do business going on. We've always done it this way, therefore it's continued to be done that way. You don't have to take, as long as tribe, you don't understand. Well, you said that, you're not saying it now, but you said at one time that the person has not been impeached until it's referred to the Senate for trial. It doesn't even have to be referred to the Senate for trial. No constitutional scholar said that before. And every time they impeach, they've taken it to trial. They don't have to. And none of you scholars can show it to me in the Constitution of the United States. Now, it says in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5, the House shall have the sole power of impeachment. That's Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5. Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6 says, and I quote, the Senate shall have the sole power to try impeachment. Let me tell you what it doesn't say. It does not say the Senate shall try all impeachments. Find it. It doesn't say that. Now, why doesn't it say that? It's because when you send the people's representatives, and why are they in Washington? They're elected by the districts in the states. We have 14 districts in the state of Michigan. If you send the representatives to Washington as the persons in Congress who are most closely allied with the people of the states, each representative in one of the districts of the states, you are as close as you can get to the people of whom the representatives go to Washington to speak in their name. And because it is government of the people, then the people's voice closest to the people of the United States carries tremendous weight. And to have the House of Representatives to impeach a president is significant enough of a political verdict against the president to tell him that the people's representatives have said to him, stop. And if the stoppages of such a grave matter as to need the invocation of a trial, but the trial is not mandated and many times it's not necessary or shouldn't be, because when the people's representatives speak through the political process, which the impeachment process is a political process, it's not a legal process, but a political process. You understand that? It's a political process, and it does not carry any legal weight within the impeachment process itself. In other words, once you have brought about everything that you can do through impeachment, that's it in terms of the impeachment process. But if you want to carry it further, then it's a legal process outside of the impeachment process. You see, that's what I was saying last week. It may be a little confusing here because they're not teaching this. And they're not teaching us, they don't understand it.
I took government classes until I started, working with you on your show. I always thought that the senators and congressmen could get impeached too and stuff. So I mean, I was kind of eye opening, and I took classes. I had a required class in college, and they never made that distinction. And when I found out that you were talking, I researched it. It stunned me because I mean I know the law, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. I know that stuff, and so. I was surprised by it. I've taken like 3 classes in that field,
Yeah, the scholars don't understand it either. And that's why I tell them to pay attention, because their training they don't have this training.
They have a training in what they can convince a judge or a jury to understand.
That's the training there.
And what that is, when you do it to a jury, you're appealing either to their own, what their connection, what their realization or their understanding of right and wrong and morality and actions and how they should be held accountable, or the judges understanding the law, which should be a little bit better than the average person's, but. Still, I mean, it's not. Basically, they're engaging. The lawyer could present an argument in court and then go and win a case, and then take that and go just argue the opposite in another courtroom and win that case.
Yeah.
There's no consistency on their thinking.
Yeah, and you see, that's another excellent point. You see, you can't tell, though, the person sitting on juries, you can tell them stuff like, if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. You can work on the emotions. You can't do that with those. If you have persons on these jurors that are trained in the law, you're not going to be falling for these sound bites. If I'm on that jury with O.J. Simpson's in jail. But you see, that is a different standard, because you're not talking to scholars, you're talking to lay persons. And then some of them are scholars, and they still don't get it. But I'm not talking about sound bites here. I'm talking about what is the intent of the Constitution, and the intent overall is to restrain power. Now, the restraint could very well be to tell the president, the vice president, they are identified out as the first 2 of the person that can be impeached, but they are called out because they don't fit the other category. The other category is civil office holders. That's why you have to single the president and vice president out, where to be applicable to them. Because if they're not singled out and you simply start to say civil officer of the United States, you're not talking about the President of the United States. You're not talking about the Vice President of the United States. You understand that? You're talking about the civil officer of the United States.
I think it's interesting. Maybe I'll interject here.
Okay.
Okay, there's like a thing of this coming to when you talk about law and you talk about perception. See, there's what they call normative ethics, which is normative ethics, also is known as normative theory or moral theory, and tends to find out what actions are right and wrong, or which characters or traits are good or bad. But when it comes to basically, that's that's the area which you're aiming for. But then there's where the rubber really meets the road at when you call about legal things and what people can get away with and the legal, in the courts. That's what they're arguing how they can argue against that or get people to forget a portion of that. That's what it's all about, to being a lawyer. That's what it's about.
To go into the impeachment process is to go into a political process and not a legal process. There are no legal consequences in the impeachment process.
So like a person could be impeached, but now they can.
But that's removal
Right.
from the office, and it stops there. Now, you want to do something further than that, which you have to do another part of that process if you want to, which they should have done that with Alcee Hastings. Hastings was impeached and removed from office as a judge, a federal judge in Florida, but they did not carry out the additional step that's in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7, which is that if you want to, therefore, have him impeached and then convicted, to then mandate he should not be eligible to hold another office of the United States. You could have done that, but they didn't do it in that case. He came back as a member of the body that impeached him. Now, if that's not unconscionable, I don't know what is, but that's what happened in the late Alcee Hastings case. He came back and ran as part of them and being a part of the club.
Then he's also the one that said the law is whatever we say it is.
And he came back and said that because the man was arrogant enough to flout he had gotten away with it by coming back as one of the accusers. If you're going to impeach and remove, then make sure that you close the door to any further entrance. That's a whole discussion you need to go on about that. But that's Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7. Okay, so I'm saying it singularly in the country, but they're not going to say anything behind it. And I will tell them to their face they're not qualified to say anything behind it. Because they don't understand the Constitution, and I do. And they're not qualified to say anything other than what I'm saying. And I'm qualified to say what I'm saying. That's a difference. I'm telling them to their face that's true. It should be sufficient for the people's representatives, those that are closest to the people, in a government that is the government of the people, intended to be that, by the people. Why? Because the people are putting their stamp of approval on those who are the elected officials in a Republican form of government guaranteed in Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, where they guarantee a Republican form of government. They're not guaranteeing anything about democracy in this governance. Those words aren't even used in the two documents, the founding documents of the country, for a reason.
The thing is, you keep on saying we're a democracy, which we're not. We're a democratic republic, or a representative republic, or whatever. But there's somebody posting. I just read it today or last night. Mm-hmm. Somebody says they're confusing democracy with freedom. That's what there's. See, they're thinking they got people believing that the word Democrat or democracy means automatic freedom. Well, it really doesn't. The People's Democratic Republic of whatever certain name doesn't mean these people are freer or have more liberties granted to them or whatever. It's so that's but they confused and confounded the word democracy intertwined it with freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait till I get to Burke. Wait till I get to Edmund Burke here. If I get to it. That's gonna be cleared up. I'm gonna read Burke's statement to you. That'll clear it up because there's some easy lifting and some heavy lifting, and Burke explains the difference between the two. Okay, and I'll read it. Hopefully, I'll be able to get to it today. Look, as one person said, here's the deal. To impeach a president a vice president, and civil officers of the United States. All of them, all civil officers are subject to the impeachment process and the removal if it is egregious enough to bring that about, but they must be in the charge of impeachment. Now, here's what last week, I think this is the point John was raising in terms of my maybe not being clear enough. When I said that there is no such specificity of the charge required for impeachment. There is no special. Uh, um, there's nothing that you must have in the accusation for the impeachment to be made. There's no specificity there. Now, that is very clear in the Constitution, because if there was specificity in the impeachment, it would have to be in Article 1, Section 2. Because Article 1, Section 2 sets up the House of Representatives, and in Article 1, Section 2, Section 5, it establishes the impeachment and places it in the House. There's nothing that spells out or states what you must impeach for. Now, why would that be true? I'm just telling you why that would be true. It's because impeachment is not to be taken lightly. These are the people's representatives saying to the president, the vice president, and civil officers of the United States. This rises to the level of an official accusation. That's enough, or should be enough, to tell the office holder to get back on the good foot, to get back get back in line with the restraints placed upon the office of the president, the vice president, and civil officers of the United States. And it should be enough, because if you respect the people's representatives, you correct the behavior that they're claiming is egregious enough for them to accuse you officially. You understand that? Now, if that's not sufficient, and if it's egregious enough, you don't have to stop there. But you see, in not stopping at that point and determining that it requires more than that, then the specificity is required, because the next step is more serious. You're talking about removing the two heads of the second branch of government. Really, the president and the person runs with the president as a result of the amendment that was placed in the Constitution in 1804. And that's the amendment that, after they, you see, the document is to continue to be perfected. It's never going to be perfected, because it can all be something that is outside of the view of those that are putting things together to make it a document that stands as the groundwork. The groundwork is the 7 articles of the Constitution. There are amendments to it that further gets rid of the aggravation that is found in some behavior of government that was not nailed down and foreseen by the document, which simply separates the powers. But they recognize that it may not be sufficient to hold and chain government down, which is the reason why the document exists. Do you scholars agree with that? Okay. So to impeach a president is serious business. To impeach a vice president is serious business. To impeach a civil office holder of the United States is serious business. But they are not removed from office based upon impeachment. In an impeachment, nothing is spelled out specific to what the charge must be for impeachment. Now listen carefully. But if you move it out of Article 1, Section 2, and you place it in the process in the next corridor of power, the Senate, for trial, in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6, which says, the Senate shall have the sole power to try impeachment. At that point, the assumption there is that you've made the determination to remove the office holder. But the requirement there is something different. That's where the specificity kicks in. And the specificity is not found in Article 1. The specificity in terms of removal is found in Article 2. And it's found in Article 2 because you're now dealing with another branch of government. Are you scholars paying attention? Because when you're now talking about the removal, then that is a different proposition placed in a different part of the Constitution of the United States. And let me tell you this. The Constitution is a geographical document. You can see that in the separation where you have Article 1 sets up the legislative branch of government, Article 2, the executive branch, and Article 3, the judicial branch of government. That's geographical there. And if you understand the geographical issue involved in the Constitution, then you understand then that the geography and the placement of the different parts of the impeachment has a purpose to be served. No one is saying this. No one has said it. But the trial in the impeachment process is not found in Article 1, but it's found in Article 2. The geography has been changed. It's in Article 2 because Article 2 says this, and I'll quote it and let you go and find it and see if I'm not quoting it correctly. Article 2 has 4 sections to it. Article 1 has 10 sections. Article 2 has 4 sections. Article 3 has 3 sections. Article 4 has 4 sections, and Articles 5, 6, and 7 have 1 section. Article 2, Section 4, the geography has been changed here. That's because of the great lawgiver, his influence at that convention, the great lawgiver of the country, the one that they hate the most. They really hate all the framers, quite frankly. And they hate what they did in that room. Power hates restraints. The wielders of power hate anyone who restrains it. They have no affection for any of that. They may pay lip service to it. And you can see that in terms of how they responded to a man that stands up, whether he means it or not, and I think he does mean it. It's not a perfect application of the meaning that he has. I think that Donald Trump is a patriot. He loves the country and so on and so forth. I believe that. There'd be no reason for a man to come down the escalator and come down from the 38th floor, which you can't even get to on the elevator because you have to have a special key that stops off there. It doesn't stop there because the man lives on the 38th floor. He has his whole mansion there. The elevator bypasses that whole floor. That whole floor is used as the palace of Donald Trump. But when he comes down that escalator, at that level, I think he's at that point on the 5th floor and come down. Oh my goodness, are we out of time already? Wow. Okay. Time restraints. So let me say this then, in closing, we'll pick it up next week and I will get to the end of this, but it does take time. The location of the process now has changed because the terms of it have changed. We're not any longer talking about impeachment. We're now talking about using the impeachment process. And we're talking about using it for another reason other than the accusation that is in fact allowed for in the Article 1 provision. We're now talking about the trial, which now there's a shift. Because in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6, it now says the Senate shall have the sole power of impeachment. To try the impeachment. The impeachment was in Article 1, Section 2, but now we're going to try it under the impeachment provision. And when you try it under impeachment, that should be for the reason for removal. But it doesn't have to be for that. I'm saying that in Article 1, Section 2, to bring a person in line, it should be enough if they really are trying to do the right thing by the country. It should be enough to have the people representatives to do this to the office holder, to say to that office holder, stop that. But you see, if they don't stop at that, then the next level is to go into another part of the geography of the Constitution, and that's in Article 2, where it goes about the possibility of a trial of the office holder. It doesn't have to be a trial, but if a trial is necessary, the framers in their infinite wisdom made the trial necessary and obligatory to stop the conduct. You understand that? Okay, we'll pick it up at that point. But that's why you have Article 2, Section 4. The president, the vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office. You don't have any choice in the matter if they won't stop. And if it's been so outrageous, such as treason, or the president is involved in bribery, or some other high crime and misdemeanors, the president must be removed. The vice president must be removed. And all civil officers of the United States must be removed from office, shall be removed. And is obligatory in the language. The president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States of America shall be removed from office upon impeachment for and conviction of the specific claims against his office. That's what it means. I'm telling you what the Constitution requires, and there's no scholar in this country that can come behind and say anything than what I've said, and I dare them to try. I'm correcting all you scholars, and you pay attention to what I'm saying here. Okay, let's get fired up. It's necessary. Next week, I'll go into some things that Evan Burke said, because that's part of this conversation too, but let's clean this up. Until next week, I want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.